Hi there, Shamo here. Welcome to Wicked Wednesday, our vlog in which we are talking about the band, music in general and beyond. In today's episode, I'm going to discuss 10 albums that influenced my taste in music. The idea for this video came as a response to the nominations that I received on Facebook for posting the 10 albums that influenced my taste in music in general. So instead of posting that on Facebook, I decided to make a short video for that. One of the very first albums that I heard in my life is this, CZERWONE GITARY 3. This is the band that started in the 1960s in Poland, for those of you who are not familiar with Polish rock music history. And that was one of my mother's favorite bands when she was growing up. So I remember having, I think, 3 of the first records at home. Another one, PRZEBOJE LATA z RADIEM Part 2. This is a compilation based on the songs, like the greatest hits of the radio program Summer with Radio, LATA z RADIEM, which is extremely popular and one of the most famous radio programs in Poland. Part 1 of this compilation featured only Polish songs, whilst Part 2 had songs from abroad. Probably the first CD I ever owned was this one, BONEY Gold, another compilation, greatest hits of BONEY. As you might know, if you know me personally, if you don't, you'll find out right now, I'm a big fan of the music from the 70s and 80s, probably due to that album, amongst others. This was probably one of the very first tapes I owned. The band is called PIERSI and the album is called AMERYKANY. What's interesting about this album is that it features songs encompassing different styles, ranging from literally folk or even bordering on like classical music, going all the way up to heavy metal, even quasi-thrash death metal. And so probably that was my very first exposure to something more heavy than, let's say, you can normally hear on the radio. One of my definite favorites of all time is Modern Talking and their album Back for Good. Again, another compilation, the greatest hits, released in 1998, featuring some new songs as well. I still love them, and I'm not ashamed to admit that. One of the best bands ever. I love their melodies, which is something that a lot of music nowadays is lacking, I think. Another compilation, but something completely different this time, Leonard Cohen's More Best Of. One of my favorite artists ever. I was lucky to actually see him live in 2007 in London, which at that time I thought, okay, the guy's over like 70, might be one of the last chances I'll actually see him live, so I had no second thoughts about going to the gig. One of the best nights, best gigs I've ever seen. And yeah, that was like a gateway to that kind of music, so not only more of his albums, but the artists like Nick Cave, for instance. Another classic Polish rock band, BUDKA SUFLERA, with their greatest hits album. Again, one of the very first CDs I owned. The album features vast majority of the best songs from their 70s and 80s. Again, as with previous compilations, that gave me a foothold into rock music and allowed me to discover more stuff. One of my first encounters with metal music was this album, RAMMSTEIN SEHNSUCHT. Again, one of the very first CDs I owned. That was obviously something completely different, something I wasn't really listening to on a daily basis because I was mainly listening to the radio. Back in the mid-1990s, when this album was released, you could still hear some of that music on the radio, which then was a great thing because that allowed me to dive into heavier music. Number 9 on the list, Metallica Reload. Whilst my first encounter with Metallica was during the previous album, Load, and I've heard some the older songs, like One, for instance, but this was the first album of Metallica that I bought, quickly followed by Garage Incorporated and Justice for All. And that was one of the most important albums, and it still is, because not only I started my journey with Metallica, but I would say with metal in general with that album. Finally, number 10, Iron Maiden's Brave New World. A classic, I would say definitely one of the most important albums for me, as not only thanks to that album I decided to pick up the bass guitar, but also I fell in love with Iron Maiden and that type of heavy metal anyway, which then led me to digging deep, going through the rabbit hole literally of discovering metal, not only the old bands from 70s, 80s, even 60s, but all the way to some modern stuff. That's it. These are the 10 albums that influenced my taste. I could probably name another at least 10 or 20. I just opted for the ones that I listened to when I was younger that helped me actually get into music, discover different genres, and broaden, so to speak, my horizons. Thank you again for tuning in and watching this episode of Wicked Wednesdays. Please do not forget to check out our Facebook and our Instagram channels. If you like our content, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and see you next time.